Hello, and welcome back to the War of Ideas podcast. I have a groundbreaking discovery I want to share with all of you. Actually, it's less of a discovery and more of just a connection between two ideas, two situations that almost everybody is aware of, but are sympathetic to one while not sympathetic to the other. And they never really make the connection that these two situations are both explained by the same phenomena. Phenomenon. I think there's one phenomenon, so it's phenomenon and not phenomena. And that phenomenon is the scarcity mindset. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that term already, and some of you can imagine what it's about. And if you have no idea, do a quick Google and find out. But I just want to let you know I'm going to be talking about one of the symptoms that arise from this scarcity mindset rather than talk about the main idea itself, which most people feel is that there's a finite amount of money and a finite amount of time in this world, and if somebody else has more money than you or more free time than you, then that is a bad thing for you because it means you get less money and less time, and that causes us to be envious of others and more selfish with the time and money we do have because we consider, especially those two things, time and money, we consider those to be rare and they are valuable to us, and the more scarce and rare they are, the more selfishly we act to preserve those things. Anyway, that's the gist of the scarcity mindset. You should still Google it though. And the symptom that I want to talk about that stems from this mindset is how humans act against their own best interests when the things that are important to them grow scarce. Okay, I'm going to say that again because this is important for everything else that I'm going to be saying for the rest of this episode. Humans act against their own best interests when the things that are important to them grow scarce. We begin making worse and worse decisions, and the things that are important to us that people have a lot of trouble managing are time and money. And the less we have of these things, the worse our decision making gets when it comes to time and money. So now I want to present to you the two situations that I alluded to earlier, and I want to show you the connection between them. Situation number one, you see someone on the street with a cardboard sign that says, "I'm hungry, any help is appreciated," and they're collecting money because they don't have enough. And as you walk by them, whether you give them money or not, you know how you feel about people who do this. And it just so turns out you were on your way home from work when you walked by this person. And work is hard. It's exhausting. Here's situation number two. You work 5 days a week, you work 8 hours a day, there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of travel time. You go home and you have less than 4 hours, and that's being generous. You have less than 4 hours until you have to do it again tomorrow. That's situation number two. And using my amazing deduction skills, I'm going to assume there are more people who work 40 hours or more a week that listen to this podcast. Then there are beggars on the street that listen to this podcast. So let's talk about situation number 2 first. You're a goal-oriented person. You have aspirations. You have places you want to go and things you want to see, but you don't have a lot of time. You think about things you wish you could do if only you had more time to do them. Think about all of the things you put off to the side because you just don't have the time to do them. All the hobbies you want to get into, all the hobbies you've stopped doing and wish you could come back to. You get home 5 out of 7 days a week exhausted, and you want to spend the little time you have before bed to decompress and relax. And it's understandable. I myself, I would like to continue learning the piano. I can barely play anything. I need sheet music to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and I have to play it very slowly. But I haven't practiced in a long time. And I think to myself, I only have 3 hours of time after I get home before I have to go to bed and do everything all over again. It's not even worth getting into. I'm better off just spending that little time I have to relax and get ready for the next day. And most of us who work these long hours, who have not a lot of spare time, or maybe you go to school for over 40 hours a week and you have homework on top of that, and your free time gets used up that way. No matter what it is, if you have a lack of free time, if your free time is scarce, you understand, you can sympathize with people who put off learning the piano, who put off traveling, who put off doing the things they truly want to do because in their own minds they think, I don't have the time, or it's not worth it with the small amount of time I have. There's no way I'm going to be able to see this thing through to the end with the small amount of time I have. And so that is situation number 2. We understand. People who are in the same situation understand. Now, what about situation number 1? Once again, I'm sure most of us are not vagrants begging for money on the street, so it's hard to put yourself in their shoes. So I want you to think to yourself, what is your reaction when you see someone begging on the street? They're not playing any instruments, they're not doing anything fancy to try and earn your money. They just put a box out in front of them and hope you're generous. What do you think about those people? Do you think it's their fault? Do you think they're stupid for taking the $5 you give them and immediately spending it on cigarettes or on alcohol? We can all agree that's not something we should be doing when we don't have a lot of money. Do you think to yourself, if I was poor like them, I would quickly find my way out of this situation? Do you sympathize with them? I'm sure many of you do, and I'm sure many of you are starting to see what I'm going to be getting at. But there are likely many of you who blame the poor person for being poor. So we have situation number 1 and situation number 2. Situation number 1 has a scarcity of money. Situation number 2 has a scarcity of time. And the best part about being able to compare these two things is that most everybody is not going to fall in both camps. If you work at least 40 hours a week, odds are you are not begging for money. Although there are plenty of people who work full-time jobs and can't afford to move out of their parents' house. And no, the reason for that is not because they buy too much Starbucks coffee every day. People who work full-time jobs and do have enough money to do the things that they want to do probably have the strongest opinions about beggars on the street. The same can also be said for people who read the books they want to read, who exercise every day, who learn new things every day, who take control and use their time wisely. Those people, regardless of how much time they have in their day, are going to have the strongest opinions about you when you say you don't have enough time in the day to do all those things. So I want to show you the connection between these two situations. I want to lead the horse to water. I want to lead you to the realization that the full-time worker has at least one thing in common with the poor person on the street. And I hope that in the same way you sympathize with other people who work 40-hour weeks when they tell you they have no time for anything, that you can sympathize with the poor person who says they have no money for anything. Because both of these things, even though one is about money and one is about time, both of these things, the struggle that people have with spending their time and spending their money wisely, fall under this symptom of the scarcity mentality. You already know that you spend your time unwisely. You already know the 4 hours of free time you have at night are hours that you should not be spending watching TV or sitting around on social media, but you do it anyway. There are things you'd rather be doing. There are long-term goals you have, and you don't have a lot of time in your daily schedule to get these things done. So you should be even more motivated to get these things done when you do have time. But you don't. This scarcity mentality leads you to take behaviors that help you in the short term, but are much worse for you in the long term. The more scarce the resource is, the worse we are at utilizing it. The less money we have, the worse off we are at budgeting that money. If you took the place of that poor beggar on the street, you would spend your money the same way. You might spend your time differently. You might soon start to make more money. But if you were in poverty, you would spend your money just as unwisely as the people who are actually in poverty. It's not that poor people focus on short-term needs because that's all they want to think about. It's because that is all they can think about. It's not that these people aren't worthy. These people are living in a context in which anyone would make dumb decisions. If a beggar makes $30 in a day, you want them to put a down payment on a house? What are they going to do with it besides spend it on food, drugs, and alcohol? It's the situation the person is in that changes their character. It is not the person's character itself. And so we know that being poor is not a lack of character. It is a lack of cash. When we can't find the time for self-improvement after coming home from work, it's because of the situation we're in that changes our character. It is not a lack of our innate character that we don't read as much or work out as much as someone who has more time. And so we know that spending the few hours of free time we have on our phones is not a lack of character. It's a lack of time. When we don't have a lot of free time, We think about it short term, ignore the long-term goals, and we watch TV and sit on our phones, even when we know we shouldn't, even when we know we don't want to. We do it anyway. And so does the person in poverty. They know they shouldn't spend the money they get from other people begging on the street, buying cigarettes. You think they don't know that? You think they don't know that. But they do it anyway. Just like we watch TV anyway. Just like we sit on our phones anyway. We think to ourselves, if only I had more free time, then maybe I'd allocate it to the things I truly want to get better at, to the hobbies I've wanted to begin. And you'd be right to think that. We think, if I had more money, then maybe I'd allocate it to renting an apartment, or put money in my 401k. And you'd be right to think that. But if I don't have that much, and I don't know if I'm going to get enough in the future, I'm not thinking long term. This is just my brain on a default setting. This is an automatic response, and we don't even realize we're doing it most days. We don't realize in the moment that watching TV in the small amount of time we have after work is a terrible way to spend our time. We don't realize that we're spending time doing things that in retrospect we don't want to do. We choose instant gratification over delayed gratification. It really is like a rewiring of our brains. Oh, I don't have time to exercise. I only get 3 hours of free time a night, 5 days a week. I need to spend that time to decompress and get ready for the next day. So, we are in the same situation as the person in poverty. The only difference is in the resource we lack. But we treat this lack of resource in the same way. The less we have of it, the worse we are at using it. So hopefully now you can see what I'm getting at. Hopefully now you can sympathize with people in poverty, just like you can sympathize with your friend at work, where you both laugh at the fact that neither of you have gone to the gym in 2 weeks and you spend all your free time on Facebook. And you spent 30 minutes on Instagram in your bed before you actually went to sleep. So instead of telling poor people to manage their money more wisely, think about how you manage your time and know that we're all human and we all have our weaknesses. And these weaknesses cannot be thrown to the wayside while saying to others, just have some more willpower, or just don't succumb to these short-term feelings, to these vices, because we all do it. You can't expect the worst off among us to be immune to these things when you yourself are not. It's unrealistic, and most people don't know it. Most people don't make the comparison between themselves and people in poverty. They can't imagine themselves in the other person's shoes. They've never been in that situation before. And that's understandable. But I hope that after listening to this, that you'll be able to at least get one of your feet into the other person's shoes and think differently about them. and think differently about everyone in a different situation than you. Telling people, oh, if I was in your situation, I would do this, this, and this, and that would be it. Easy. If you say that, you're wrong. Stop saying that, because it's not true.